Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Philadelphia Marathon race preview and pre-race tips by QT2 Systems and the run formula coach, Courtney Kutler. My name is Reem Jishi. I'm the content director for QT2 Systems, and we welcome you this evening. Thanks, Courtney, for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm excited to be here.
And before you get started, let me just give a little intro for Courtney. So Courtney is a lifelong runner. She's also a triathlete. She's both an athlete and coach with the run formula and QT2 Systems. She has raced the Philadelphia Marathon twice, including last year, where she qualified for the Boston Marathon. That was her 8th time qualifying, and she's run Boston 5 times and has coached several athletes for Philadelphia, as well as many other marathons and other race distances. So I will turn it over to you now, Courtney.
Great. Thank you, Reem. So hi, guys. I'm really excited to go over the Philadelphia Marathon race preview and pre-race tips. So starting off, we are going to go through the presentation overview. So we'll go over the QT2 Five Cornerstones, which is what we use through all of our coaching. And we'll carry those into the final weeks, race week, and race day. And then after that, we'll go through a brief course overview. So the 5 cornerstones that QT2 goes by, the first 2 are training and nutrition / restoration, and that plays into the preparation phase. Then we have event fueling and pacing, which is part of the execution phase. And then you add mental fitness to all of that, and that is what will provide you with your race or event outcome. So for the final weeks, again, focusing on those QT2 cornerstones with training in the final weeks, you've got your final key sessions, so your last long run, probably some marathon pace runs, and then you're going to start to taper. At this time, and this is essentially where we are right now, being about 4 weeks out, you're probably at peak and starting to taper. At this time, there are no fitness gains. So that's really important to remember. And really now is just the time to try to focus on race conditions and intensities that you might encounter during your training so that you're prepared for race day. So it's really important. Hilly is a rolling hill course, so you want to practice on some hills and also really practice on all weather conditions, because you never know what you're going to have on race day. So get out there and do your runs, even if it's raining or super windy or too hot or too cold. Just get comfortable running in all sorts of conditions. It's also a really important time to do a dress rehearsal run. So that's the time where in your last long run, you're going to test out your gear and equipment. So, try to look at the forecast, determine what clothing you plan to wear on race day, and do your last long run in that. Have your watch set to the modes that you want to use on race day, and then practice your fueling and nutrition as well. So for nutrition and restoration in the final weeks, you really want to focus on having really good fluid intake. So the goal is to drink at least half of your body weight in pounds to ounces in fluid. So essentially, if you're a 200-pound person, you're going to aim for 100 ounces of fluid daily. And that's in addition to what is lost during your workout. So typically you're losing or needing to take in about 12 ounces of fluid every 30 minutes in your workouts. You should still stay with that, but then also in addition to that, add the extra ounces that's equivalent to half your body weight. You want to focus on keeping nutrient density up. So really aiming for a diet high in fruits and vegetables, aim for 4 daily servings each of fruits and vegetables. And then you're also going to add in a replenishment meal the evening prior to your long run. So that's a meal that's going to be high in carbohydrate and low in fat. You also want to focus on fully fueling all of your workouts. So practicing what you plan to take for fuel on race day is super important. Make sleep a priority. So you want to aim for 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep per night. If that's just not possible, at the very least, aim to get off your feet around 8 o'clock at night or so, just to kind of give your legs a rest. You should be using a recovery drink. QT2, we really like clean athlete recovery drink after each session. So the recovery drink should be a 4-to-1 carbohydrate to protein ratio, and you're taking that into speed recovery. You also want to take extra anti-inflammatory measures. So maybe increasing your omega-3 intake to the 2 to 3 gram range, focusing on your hydration, reducing stress, and focusing again on sleep. That will all help with the anti-inflammatory measures. And if you can, it's not always easy, but start to taper down your caffeine intake. So target less than 800 milligrams per week. That will just help your body respond more favorably to caffeine on race day if you choose to take it. So the fueling in the final weeks. You want to fuel in accordance with your plan during every single session. So that means even for your short runs, you're going out with a handheld of your sport drink and sipping it at the frequency you plan to take it during the race. Same thing with gels. You want to practice taking it at that same frequency you plan to take on race day. You want to look at and we'll get into this a little bit later, but you want to look at what they're providing on the race course and make sure that you are comfortable taking that, especially with the hydration. So I'll jump around a little bit, but Philadelphia does Gatorade Endurance, and I highly recommend at this point trying to get yourself some if you aren't used to taking it, and practice it during your runs. It's a lot easier to take hydration from the race course versus carrying it all on your body on race day. For the gels and the other nutrition you plan to take, that is something that you should be taking with you at the start of the race, because you won't have gels available to you right away on the course. So the purpose of fueling like this in the final weeks is to train your gut for race day. In addition to that, it's also helping start the recovery process for your next session. So really important thing to do. You're topping off all your glycogen stores, and it's going to help all around. So on race day, something to remember is fueling is the most important and also the most likely limiter on performance. So it's something that you have complete control over, which means you need to be really on top of taking things in as you need. Pacing in the final weeks. So you're going to have easier runs, mostly easier aerobic runs with some few race specific training sessions. You want to try to simulate some of those race intensities, so that marathon pace effort for some short intervals. In addition to that, you want to train at your race targets that you plan to use during the race. So it's different for everybody. It could be heart rate, it could be power, it could be rate of perceived exertion or RPE, or it could be pace, or a combination of those. Mental fitness in the final weeks. So this is the time to really begin reducing external pressures as best you can. Keep in mind that there are some pressures that are real versus self-imposed. So some of those real pressures are sometimes hard to limit, but those self-imposed ones we can certainly decrease as much as possible. So don't overcommit to things, limit your social activity, and really just try to focus on rest. Focus also on items that you have 100% control over. So that would be your attitude and your fueling. It's a perfect time to begin visualization. So with visualization, the way that it works best is to utilize all of your senses when you're doing your visualization practice. So that would be sight, sound, taste, smell, and touch. So what I like to do when I'm doing visualization is I first visualize my best performance strategy. So what does it look like when I'm having an amazing race? Everything's falling into place. How do I feel? What are the sights that I see? What are the sounds? It could be the runners next to me. It could be the spectators. What are, the taste and the smell of the fuel that I'm taking in? I try to really visualize as much as I can. And then in addition to that, it's important to practice coping imagery. So something could go wrong in your race. And if you're not visualizing that from the start, you could be surprised on race day. So think about things that could potentially happen during the race that would, essentially give you an extra little challenge, and think about how you are going to respond to it. So what can you do to fix it? If you're, losing your pace and you're feeling, just sluggish, maybe you just need another gel. If you are, falling behind on what your specific goals were, maybe you just need to focus on a mantra to kind of motivate you and push you through. So come up with a lot of different ways of dealing with any obstacles that might get in your way on race day. And then finish your visualization with some more success imagery. So finish what it's going to feel like to cross that finish line and to know you hit your goal. So you're sandwiching the challenging part in between the two positive parts. And that's a really effective way to increase your mental fitness. You also want to list goals and targets over the next couple weeks. So goals are things that you have a lot of control over. Targets are things in which you have some control. So goals might be how often you're going to fuel, where you expect your heart rate to be at any given point of the race. Targets are more number based, like the example here. I want to run a sub 4-hour marathon, so I'm going to hit that 2-hour mark at the halfway point. When you're setting targets, just make sure you're setting an appropriate target based on your training. And then trust in your preparation. You know, most of the hard work is behind you now. You've put a lot of time into training, so trust that you're ready to have a strong race. Logistics in the final weeks. So I recommend getting on the Philadelphia Marathon website several times leading into the race, reading all the emails that they send you, make sure there are no last minute changes. It's a good time now, 4 weeks out, to make lists of what you plan to pack and bring, confirm all your reservations. So hotel, dining, transportation, determine when your check-in times are for the hotel, and what you're going to do with your luggage if you can't check in when you first arrive. Start to think about the transportation you're going to use throughout the weekend, and especially to the start. So Philadelphia has a really good metro system, SEPTA, train and bus. The website's listed here. There's also plenty of parking garages in the past, and I assume they'll have that this year. There have been a couple shuttle buses from hotels, so check their website for details. It could be something that's really close to you and something that's beneficial to use. The other thing that I really like about Philadelphia is if you stay right down in the center near Logan Circle, a lot of this stuff can be done on foot. So when I stayed down there, I stayed right near Logan Circle and walked to the Expo and walked to the start and walked home from the finish. So it was very convenient. Okay, so moving on to race week. Training. So for this cornerstone in race week, again, our final sessions, similar to the weeks prior, they're going to be shorter, easier, and definitely just focused on some race specific work. Again, there's no fitness gains during this time, so it's not the time to add in extra miles or extra intensity. Don't fall into that trap of panic training at this point. And always err on the side of recovery. So if you wake up one morning and you're feeling unusually fatigued, just take the day off. Could only help you, and it's certainly not going to detract from your fitness at this point. If you get to Philadelphia early enough, I recommend doing some on-course training. So the start and finish are right near the Art Museum or the Rocky Steps. And in addition to that, there's Kelly Drive, which is right off of that area. Really good areas to train on that are, safe to train even with traffic. Friday, I recommend taking a day off, completely off. And then Saturday, maybe go do a short, easy shakeout run. So no more than 20 to 25 minutes, nice, easy pace, maybe with a couple pickups thrown in there just to keep your legs fresh. Nutrition and restoration in race week. So most of the week, you're going to eat a relatively normal diet. And then 2 nights before, so Friday night, you're going to have your high carbohydrate dinner. So what I consider your big pasta dinner should fall on Friday night. Then Saturday morning, you'll have your large breakfast, ideally finished by 9 o'clock. And that again is focused on high carbohydrates like pancakes, hash browns, eggs, toast. Try to avoid coffee if possible. And you definitely want to keep it low fat and low fiber and focus on hydration, starting at breakfast and throughout the day. So after breakfast, the day before the race, so on Saturday, you want to start to taper food throughout the day. So you're going to continue to snack on carbohydrate-rich foods. Pretzels are a great option. Keep it low in fat and low in fiber. A good lunch option is a bagel sandwich with some lean protein on it. Try to avoid vegetables and cheese. Again, we don't want to add that dairy and fiber at this point. You want to make sure you can easily digest the food that you're taking in. And then you're going to finish your day with dinner just being a small, like 1 cup of pasta or so and some lean protein for dinner. The idea for this is that you have fully topped off all your carbohydrate stores and you're going to bed feeling satisfied, but not stuffed. So you hopefully will have a good night's sleep. So hydration this week in particular is a big focus. You want to drink plenty of sports drink and water as you get towards the couple days before the race. Prioritize sport drink over water just to get those extra electrolytes and carbohydrates in. Try to taper your caffeine, as we talked about, throughout the week with none prior to race day. It will just allow your body to respond even more strongly to the caffeine that you take in on race day. Aim for 7 to 8 hours per night of sleep. Keep in mind the night before the race, you may not sleep well, and that's okay. If you have gotten some good rest the week before, you'll be totally fine. And then just do your best to stay off your feet when you're not training as much as possible. I know in taper, we have extra free time and extra energy, and people want to rearrange their house or do some deep cleaning. Now is not the time to do that. So anytime that you're not training, you should do your best to get off your feet. Fueling during race week. So again, we're going to practice the fueling that we plan to do on race day. So you want to fuel in accordance with what that race plan is and use the products you're going to be using on race day. The purpose of this is to top off your glycogen levels so that you are fully stocked for race day and are able to use those. You want to avoid any of those zero drinks. So anything with artificial sweeteners that often just does not sit well in your stomach and your body has a hard time digesting that. Pacing on through race week. So again, you've got those easier sessions, maybe some marathon pace efforts. You're going to think about those targets that you plan on using on race day. So heart rate, power, RPE or pace. And you really just want to focus on not overdoing it. To the right, this image is from the Run Formula website. They have a great tool on there called the running calculator, where you can put in some performance times and it will give you a prediction of what you could run your marathon at. So that can help you kind of fine tune your race pace as well. Race week is another time to really increase that mental fitness practice. So again, try to reduce any external pressures as best you can. Focus on what you have control over. So that's your attitude and your fueling plan. Trust in your preparation. You've put lots of training in. Just trust that you are ready to go for race day. And then continue visualization each night during race week. So think about what it looks like to hit your targets, what could go wrong and how you're going to respond. And then also finish with that feeling of crossing the finish line. Check-in logistics for race week. So the Expo is held at the Philadelphia Convention Center, Hall F and Arch Street on November 18th to 19th. So depending on where you're staying, it might be an easy opportunity to just shake out your legs and walk there. There's also plenty of parking garages, and the SEPTA bus and train stops are near there as well. You need to be in person to pick up your race materials and have your photo ID, race confirmation, as well as updated COVID vaccination card with you. So Friday, November 18th, the Expo is from 12 to 9 p.m. Saturday, it's 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I will let you know that last year, I think we went midday and their line was wrapped around the building. So plan that into your day that you might be waiting a good 30 minutes or so to even just to get into the Expo. I think part of that was they were limiting the number that was in there, but just keep that in mind, and you might have better luck if you go right as they open. That might be a little less congested. Race day. All right. Okay. So race morning nutrition, you want to focus on some simple carbohydrates, getting some fluids with electrolytes, some sport drink again, and a small amount of protein. You want to avoid fat, fiber, and any extra vitamins or minerals. So the Core Diet, which is a group of registered dietitians that works with QT2, and many of them are coaches as well. Their recommended breakfast is applesauce, banana, and a scoop of whey protein, which I like to blend into a smoothie on race morning. And I'll have that and then sip on sport drink leading up to the start of the race. You want to try to complete eating your breakfast 2 to 3 hours prior to race start, which means oftentimes setting your alarm. It's an early start for Philly, so you may need to set your alarm just to get up and have breakfast in time. Then sip on your sport drink until the race starts. Bring some extra nutrition with you just in case you feel like you need a little bit of extra energy before the race. And then take your first gel 15 to 20 minutes prior to race start. Okay, race day fueling. So to the right is an example of what the core diet can provide with their personalized fueling plan. Again, this is just an example of a specific athlete who was planning on running 3:20 for their marathon time. So you can see their breakfast listed about 3 hours before start, their first gel 15 minutes prior to the start, and then they have a gel essentially every 40 minutes. When they hit the halfway point, they switch to Cliff Blocks and have one Cliff Block every 2 miles. So the core diet does provide this service. If you're interested in looking into that, they can really analyze what your personal needs are for race day. Keep in mind, in a race like this, the aid stations can get pretty crowded, and sometimes you go in to get your drink or your fuel and it's just too crowded. So don't give up, don't get frustrated. Usually these aid stations are pretty long, so if you don't hit them right when you want to at the start, just go down a little bit further and chances are it's going to open up and you'll be able to get in there. I always like during a race to make eye contact with the volunteer whose drink I'm going to take essentially, and I'll point right at them and say Gatorade or water or whatever it is I need so that I'm sure I'm getting exactly what I expect to get. If it's a hot day or if your gels don't have quite as much sodium, for example, like they have listed here with these power bar gels, you may want to consider taking a salt supplement every time you take your gel. So again, that's something you want to practice in training and see if that helps. But if you find that you are a heavy sweater or it's just a hotter day, that can definitely make a huge difference. Fueling and nutrition on race day. So you want to follow your race fueling plan that you have been training with all along. Nothing new on race day. It's not the time for experimentation at all. You definitely want to focus on taking your gels or chews every 30 to 45 minutes. That's super important and right from the start. So make sure you're not getting behind on your fueling at all. Philly will have water and Gatorade endurance formula at every fluid station, which is approximately 2 miles. So as far as hydration, you should be fine just taking what they have on the course if you're used to that. They will also have Gatorade Endurance Energy Gels at miles 11, 18, and 22. So again, you do want to carry your own gels because waiting till mile 11 is going to be way too late. But these are good extra gels if you need them. So here's what they'll have on the course. Here's the nutrition facts of the gels. You can see it's got 20 grams of carbohydrates per gel and 90 grams of sodium. So that may be, in this scenario, you may want to take a little extra salt as supplementation. In addition to that, notice that the calories are only 80 calories a pouch, and typically you want to aim for about 100 calories every 40 minutes. So you may need to take these a little more frequently. Mental fitness for race day. So now is the time to really just focus on what you have within your control. Trust in your preparation, trust in your fitness, stick to your plan. So the controllables are, again, your attitude and your fueling plan. You can't control if there's bad weather or the road conditions are not great, but you can control your attitude. So try to stay positive and present throughout the race. Secondly, you want to focus on your targets. So whether that's power, pace, or heart rate, and stick to your plan, run your race. Don't get carried away with what somebody else near you is doing. Trust yourself and stick to your plan. Remember how you plan to react if something doesn't go according to plan. That could be mantras. It could be, just reminding yourself of a positive attitude. And it could even just be something as easy as fueling, taking an extra gel because you're feeling low in sugar. Race day pacing. So there's lots of smartwatches out there that can help you tell what your paces are. In addition to that, there's plenty of tools online. So I really like findmymarathon.com. They can do a Philadelphia Marathon race band. And essentially what you do with this is you enter in what your goal target time is, what your start and pacing strategies are. So in a congested race, a big race like this, I recommend a conservative start for the start strategy because it's going to be a little crowded. And then pacing strategy, you're always going to have your best race if you're running a negative split. So those are the two I like to choose for the strategies. And then what it will do is essentially tell you what each mile pace should be, which obviously there's going to be fluctuations depending on how you start and how you plan to finish, as well as what the course elevation is. So this is a helpful tool to kind of see the variation in pace and know where you should be for each mile. So in addition to that, we do have that run formula calculator that can be a good way to predict what your total marathon time will be on a good day. And then what you could do is take that and put it into the Find My Marathon pace band. Remember that pacing and race execution are so important in a marathon. It's easy to go out too fast in a 5K and hang on and be okay, but a marathon's a whole different animal. So you want to make sure you're really sticking to your plan and running a smart race. They do have pace teams at Philadelphia, but I always recommend with pace teams to use caution. There's a couple reasons for that. One is it can be extremely congested and hard to kind of get into your own rhythm. The other one that's a big one is the way that the pacers choose to pace the race may not be the way that you can best run your race or that you've trained to run your race. So for an example, if you decide you're going to go out really conservative and try to negative split, that might not be the way the pace group is doing it. They may just hit even, 9-minute mile splits every mile, and that was not your plan. So you don't want to get carried away into something that you are not prepared to do. In addition to that, I want you to keep in mind that if you're using a GPS watch for pacing, they don't always read well in big cities with tall buildings and going over bridges. So don't rely solely on the GPS. In fact, I ran a marathon once where I was relying on that and had a goal of qualifying for Boston, kept looking at my pace, knew I was right on target, maybe a little ahead of schedule. And then all of a sudden, with 2 miles left in the race, I looked down and looked at the total running time and realized I was going to have to sprint the last 2 miles to get that Boston qualifier. And fortunately I did, but it was a wake-up call not to rely on the GPS because it's not always accurate. So typically what I'll do is I will turn off my auto lap. I might look down at my average lap pace, but I'm essentially hitting my manual lap split every time I see a mile marker on the course. That way I know it's more accurate based on where I am in the course. Another thing with marathons is be prepared that you might run slightly longer than 26.2. Most often people do. And that's because the way they measure the course is by measuring all of the tangents, the shortest distance around corners. And we don't always run that way during a race because of crowds or just, where we are on the road. So keep that in mind. If you have a specific goal of running 4-hour marathon, keep in mind that you may actually be running slightly longer than 26.2. Logistics on race day. So you want to have your morning bag packed in advance the night before, definitely. Pack some extra clothes. You want to dress warm to the start so that you're not getting chilled before the start. And then you want to pack some dry clothes for your race check bag so that you have some dry clothes after the race. You want to set out your electronics, make sure they're fully charged. You've got all your fueling right there next to your clothes and your shoes. Pin your bib, go ahead and pin your bib on the shirt you plan to wear so that everything's ready in the morning and you don't have to think about anything last minute. You also want to confirm your race morning logistics the day before. So make sure you know exactly what you plan to do when you plan to leave the hotel. If you're meeting someone, where you plan to meet them. And then do your best to get to bed early, set an alarm, or in my case, I set multiple alarms just in case, and make sure that you are ready to go. So on race day, the start for wheelchairs and hand cycles is 6:55 in the morning, and then runners and walkers at 7. Over to the right, you can see this map of the start area. So there's 8 corrals, and you will be assigned a corral at the expo when you pick up your bib. And that's based on the time that you told Philadelphia you expected to run this marathon in. So if it's changed dramatically from when you registered, I would consider going to one of the help desks at the expo and asking to get that changed. I did have a friend do that last year and it was no problem at all. So just make sure that you feel you're in the right corral based on the realistic goal that you have for race day. Here's some other helpful hints for race morning. Arrive early. There are some security checkpoints that you have to go through. They open at 5 o'clock in the morning, and there can be lines going through those. So just make sure you've given yourself plenty of time to get through there. You need to have your bibs visible and fastened on your shirt the whole time. So if you're wearing extra clothing to keep warm, that's fine. Just make sure it's something you can lift up and show them your bib number. You may be required to wear face masks. I think the guidelines are changing as we speak. The website currently says in public areas that face masks will be required. So I would just keep checking back with either the Philadelphia masking guidelines or check back on the Philadelphia Marathon website to see if there's any updates. Your bags will be subject to inspection at those security checkpoints. And when you go to put a bag in gear check, you can only bring those clear plastic participant bags that they gave you at the Expo. So make sure you keep a hold of that. And then you also want to put your gear check tag on there. So that's on your bib. You'll just rip it off and make sure it's affixed to your bag. Philadelphia Marathon has made it really clear that the start of the race will not be delayed due to lines at security checkpoints. So make sure you have plenty of time. Okay, here are some stats for Philadelphia Marathon. So there are 30,000 runners, 60,000 spectators, 3,000 volunteers, runners from all 50 states and DC area, as well as runners from 42 different countries. So you can see it's a really good sized marathon. It's kind of got that big city marathon feel, but the logistics surrounding the race kind of have a small town feel. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. So tips and cutoff times for race day. The weather is typically between 42 and 54 degrees, which is an ideal temperature for running a marathon. The cutoff times is right around 7 hours, which is a 16-minute mile pace. And because it is such a good sized race, be prepared to run with people every step of the way. It can be really encouraging, but also make sure, again, that you're sticking to your race plan. And then don't forget body glide. You know, it's getting cooler. We're going to be putting on a lot more clothes. You want to make sure that you're not chafing throughout the race. Okay, course overview. So here to the left is a picture of the start. You can see there's 2 lanes of the start, and then you'll go around Logan Circle and then continue down Benjamin Franklin Parkway. So here's the course map. I do recommend getting on the marathon website and expanding this because it's so small here. But essentially this is the entire course. It's relatively flat and fast, but it's not pancake flat by any means. There's definitely some rollers, so don't be surprised by that. There's a lot of really beautiful views going through Fairmount Park and along the Schuylkill River. Lots of neighborhoods with great energy. You're going through a lot of historic districts and university areas, so it's a really fun race. The race day course elevation. So you can see here for the first 6 miles or so, it's actually relatively flat. The hills start at around mile 7, and that's when you're going through the park. So there's some rollers, and those will continue through about mile 16. Then it flattens out a little bit with a few little, what I like to call little speed bumps here and there in the last 10 miles or so of the race. So the start is flat and fast. You are going down the iconic Benjamin Franklin Parkway, passing a lot of landmarks, including Logan Circle and Love Park. Then you go on to Arch Street, and that has additional landmarks. You're going to go by the convention center where the Expo was, and the entrance into Chinatown, which has this beautiful Friendship Gate. So it's really neat. And then you'll continue past the Vietnam and Korean War veteran memorials. And there's a lot of spectators. It's just a really exciting, energetic time. So you want to make sure you are being conservative and running your race and not wasting any energy weaving in and out of people. Expect your first mile to be your slowest mile because it will be crowded. So miles 1 through 7, make sure you are approaching this with lots of patience and conserving your energies. It's relatively flat. You should feel like $1,000,000. So it should feel like you're holding back at the beginning. You want to follow your pacing plan, try not to get too caught up in the crowds, focus on fueling right from the start. And then just before mile 7, you're going to cross over the bridge over the Schuylkill River into University City. So you'll pass by UPenn and Drexel. And then at about mile 7, that's when the uphills start. You're going to go uphill past America's First Zoo into West Fairmont Park, that has a lot of rolling hills. That's also the time where the spectators have thinned out quite a bit. So this is a really good time to just get into your zone, focus on your pacing, focus on those targets, and on your fueling. Miles 14 to 20, you'll pass by the start finish area, which is the art museum with those famed rocky steps. Then you're going to head out onto Kelly Drive, which is relatively flat along the river. You're going to go all the way out to Manayunk, which is a super fun neighborhood. It's like a big party at the turnaround, which will give you energy for the return back on Kelly Drive. Then the last 10K is all along Kelly Drive, heading back towards those rocky steps. It's a really good time to get energy and inspiration from runners in front and behind. With that out and back, you'll get to see essentially everybody in the race. So that's exciting. The last 10K of any marathon is going to hurt. So be prepared for that. It's going to feel uncomfortable, but this is the time where if you run a smart race, you can actually take some risks here because you are so close to the finish. So I typically, like around mile 20, like to look down at my heart rate, see where it's at, and then try to bump it up about a beat per mile from there on out. It just gives me that extra energy to push each mile. If you find that you're starting to reel people in and pass them, use that to your advantage, use that as some inspiration for you. And just remember, the harder you push, the sooner you'll be at the finish. And then post-race. So the amenities they have post-race, they'll give you a medal, some bottles of water, a Mylar blanket, and then there's some tables with some post-race food. It's also the time that you can go pick up your checked bag. And then it's a relatively small area, can get kind of congested. So I would recommend coordinating a meeting place with family and friends outside of that area. And that is it. So feel free to email me or call me if you have any questions. And I'm available at any point to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thanks very much, Courtney. If anyone who is online right now has any questions, you can feel free to come off mute and ask them, or put them in the chat box. All right. It's always good when you do such a comprehensive presentation that no one has any questions. But as you go along, if people do have questions, feel free to reach out to Courtney. That was great. Thank you very much, Courtney, for doing this evening.
Thank you.
All right. Good luck to everyone who is racing at Philadelphia.
Yes, good luck.